Yeah. Get started. I would like to call this meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order for August 21st, 2023. Thanks everyone for attending. We are meeting in person as well as remotely via WebEx, if I'm not mistaken, or Microsoft Teams. I'd first like to start by congratulating Giuseppe and Roxy on your wedding yesterday. Congratulations to both of you. And with that said, Roxy, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight? I'd first like to start by congratulating Giuseppe and Roxy on your wedding yesterday. Congratulations to both of you. Thanks, Roxy. I'd also like to welcome Giuseppe's brother, all the way from Milan, correct? Thanks for being here. Long travels. Let the record reflect that Councilors Fury and Quinnell are excused from this meeting this evening. And with that said, we will start with communications from the public. I think, Dana, do you have a quick announcement to make first?
I do have a quick announcement, and thank you for giving me the moment. I am happy to announce that we have a new fire chief on board. Cole Hadley is with us here. He is a captain with the City of Whitefish right now, fire department, and we're super excited for his start on Monday. It was after 2 rounds of interviews with internal and external candidates that it was very clear Cole came out on top. And so congratulations, Cole.
Nice job, Cole. We'll start with communications from the public. We do have 4 hearings this evening, so if you're here to speak on one of our public hearings, please wait until I call that specific hearing. Otherwise, if you have anything to bring to the attention of the council, now would be your time. And your name and address for the record, please. Nathan.
Just keep it brief. Nathan Dugan, 937 Kalispell Avenue. So I'll talk about the item that you guys passed last time that's on your consent agenda that I spoke on that time, but just want to continue to encourage you guys to not just look at the zoning densities, but to also look at things like setbacks, heights, parking, lot coverage, that sort of thing. And to do that maybe concurrently with the growth policy rather than waiting another 3 years to address some of that stuff. Some of that stuff might be appropriate to wait longer, but there may be 1 or 2 of those things that we should look at before that. So that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Nathan. Further public comment this evening? Michelle, anyone online? Any volunteer board reports from the audience? How about the council? I'll take a motion for the consent agenda. You do have the minutes enclosed for the August 7th closed executive session as well as the regular meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I so move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously, which brings us quickly to our first public hearing of the evening, which will be Resolution 23-18, a resolution amending the Legacy Homes Program procedures, purchase prices, rental fees, and fees in lieu. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you tonight is a resolution to update the Legacy Home Program admin procedures and fee in lieu of affordable housing. The admin procedure update is very minor, and it's a response to the zoning text amendment contained within Ordinance 23-13, which was brought to you before you on August 7th. The changes there merely relate to the table in section 4.5, which is page 304 of your packet. That just updates the parking, zoning, and some other minor details used in those examples for zoning districts WR3 and WR1. And then in addition, the fee in lieu of affordable housing is a yearly update to reflect the change in the average sale price of homes in the past 3 years and kind of measure the difference in the affordability or what an affordable house is versus the median sale price of houses that we're seeing. If you remember this from prior years, this is an average over the last 3 years of all sales within the MLS under the $5 million mark. Taking that average and comparing it to what an affordable sale price is. That is contained within on page 318 of your packet, the 2023 numbers relating to both home sales for affordable prices at the various AMI levels, as well as the 2023 rental price distribution for affordable rents at the various AMI levels. You can see the 2023 fee in lieu of affordable housing is now $294,349. That's a pretty significant jump, obviously, from the 2022 number of $182,274, reflective of the pretty significant change we've seen in house prices over the past 3 years, and especially even in the last year. Both the AMI numbers pulled from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development have increased about 4.8%. So likely the home price and rental price are about 4.8% higher than the 2022 numbers. With that, staff respectfully request the council adopt the updated housing and rental prices and the fee in lieu of affordable housing to keep pace with the changing housing market, and I'm available for any questions.
Thanks, Luke. Excuse me. Thanks, Luke. Any questions for Luke on his staff report tonight? Rebecca.
Welcome, Luke. I'm Rebecca. I haven't met you yet. The one thing, I know we always use the 59937 data, and it's easier on everybody and more available, but I'm just telling you this since you're a new housing planner. Whoa. So I, as a city, hello. I'll just talk really fast. I would like to know just within city limits data, because that is our jurisdiction. So just want you to know that for the future, but thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's certainly something we can look into. I understand the 59937 is to match our previous work on the 2022 roadmap and needs assessment, but that's certainly something we can do further research on.
Why don't we take a quick break until you can fix this, Michelle, please?
Thank you. Happy to be here.
How do you pronounce your last name?
Spawnable.
Honorable, okay.
I got very lucky in finding a pretty affordable unit in the city. Yeah, I rent to the ADU.
We're good, Michelle? Sounds like it. We did advertise for a public hearing on Resolution 23-18, and we'll hold that public hearing now. Any public comment this evening? Nathan?
Hey, Nathan Dugan, 937 Kalispell Avenue here again. So I looked up my comment. Giuseppe, thanks for asking me a question about this last week at the fish tank. Didn't have an answer for you there, but here's my comment, so I can answer you now. But I looked up my comment from last year on this item when the fee in lieu was proposed to be a whole heck of a lot lower, and basic gist of that comment was that it was way too low. And I still feel that way, even though it's going up, it's still too low. The important piece of the calculation is that it looks at the past year from January, I believe. So if my assumption is correct on that, we're just looking at 2020, 2021, and 2022 for the average real estate prices. So we're still looping in some pre-pandemic real estate prices and conditions. And so, this measure is lagging by 3 years. If you look at the sales prices that you're going to approve along with the fee in lieu increase, there's only a couple places on that chart where the fee in lieu that somebody would pay wouldn't need additional money to cover the purchase price, basically. So I think that those should at least be in line, and I think that maybe now is not the right time to do it, although I hope that you do it now, but I think that calculation should be looked at. And maybe a year is too short of a time frame, although with how rapidly things have changed over the last couple of years, it's not currently. But 2 years, I think, would be a better measure, because we're looking right now, 3 years from now, we're still going to be, houses in Whitefish are still getting more expensive currently right now. Even though they're getting cheaper in Kalispell, they're getting cheaper in Columbia Falls, they're still getting more expensive in Whitefish. We're just going to continually lag behind on this. And I think that the fee in lieu, we hope nobody pays it. So it should, one, be a pretty big disincentive, but also the city or the housing authority or somebody should be able to construct housing one for one. I still feel that way. I still feel like it's too low and the calculation should be different. So that's what I'm advocating for. I hope that we can change that, since we haven't over the last like 10 months or so. But yeah, that's my comments on that. So thanks.
Thanks, Nathan. Further public comment tonight? Michelle, anyone online? Go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. Preferred. Rebecca.
I move to adopt resolution, is it 23-13? 18, a resolution amending Legacy Homes Program procedures, purchase prices, rental prices, and fees in lieu.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion?
No.
All those in favor? Excuse me, Giuseppe.
Just a comment. I understand that we're always running after and improving and fixing, and I learned that this is sometimes what we have to do. And also to the comment about the data for the Whitefish city limits, neither the HUD nor the additional data from county allows us to granularly zoom into this. So that's a challenge that we'll have to address in the future if we want to be more accurate, because we can go down to zip code but cannot zoom down to Whitefish city limits for the HUD related data. I'll vote in favor of the motion anyhow.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Frank, do you have any comments? No. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. Thanks, Luke. We'll move on to ordinance 23-17, an ordinance amending Chapter 2 of our solid waste of Title 4 of Whitefish City Code, and this will be on a first reading. Craig.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So it's been a long year with our animal-resistant containers, but I'm happy to report we're hopefully just a few weeks away from finalizing the rollout, pun intended, and having the last of the animal-resistant carts delivered to the final residents. Based on that, there are some current regulations that need to be updated. We currently, in our code, still require owners to store solid waste in securely latched animal-resistant containers, which we now know isn't required because they're automated. We also still require in our code for containers to be secured inside a home or garage. So what you guys have in your packet is an amendment to, or a proposed amendment to section 4.2 of the code, which will include provisions to allow residents to contract with third-party recycling contractors, which currently isn't allowed. Require residents to use animal-resistant containers, which we've now provided, or will. Require the lids to be securely closed with no solid waste being placed outside the container, which is definitely an issue that we're seeing throughout town. It will allow containers to be placed out at the curb at 7 p.m. the evening before and picked up by 7 or brought back in by 7 p.m. the day of pickup. There's an amendment to require all businesses producing food scraps and food byproducts to use animal-resistant containers, and also require that containers be placed 4 feet from any obstacles, which is an issue that we've heard a number of complaints from Republic about. So we don't see that there are any financial implications based on these changes, and we respectfully recommend that council hold a public hearing to consider these changes.
Thanks, Craig. Any questions for Craig on his staff report? Rebecca.
So, Craig, why are we allowing people to place them out at 7 p.m. the night before instead of in the morning when we know that bears are nocturnal and come around and knock them around at night?
Yeah, we feel that with these new animal-resistant containers, one of the things that I think was promised to residents was the ability to put them out the night before. Although they could get knocked around, we're confident that they won't open or won't provide an attractant for the bears.
Okay, and then the second question is, could you explain what will happen if people are non-compliant with our new rules now?
Pretty
Because-
sure these are just civil violations, but there could be
Oh,
fines.
Angie?
Yeah, I can do that. First of all, we kind of build a catch-all into this that provides that if people are leaving their trash, they're leaving extra trash bags to the side, that Republic might be able to charge for some, additional services for pickup. We did take the criminal penalties out of the garbage realm simply because I think our police officers have more on their hands than citing people for garbage violations. Bridger can correct me if I'm wrong. And so we've moved it just to a purely civil municipal citation program. But I really think Dana and I had a meeting with Republic, and Dana and Laney and I a few weeks ago, and we spoke to them about the possibility of billing if people are leaving their garbage, extra bags. I think that might be a big disincentive for people too when they start getting billed for that extra pickup. But that's something, we kind of just built it into the ordinance, but going forward, I think it's something that we can explore.
Okay, thanks. I just had some neighbors were upset about people leaving extra bags out. And I knew this was coming. I just wanted to know what the repercussions were for people that were non-compliant. So thanks for explaining it.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further questions for Craig? We did advertise for a public hearing on ordinance 23-17, and we'll hold that hearing now. Any public comments? Michelle, anyone online? Can you go ahead and close the public hearing? Giuseppe?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move to approve in the first reading ordinance number 23-17, an ordinance of our city amending Chapter 2 Solid Waste of Title 4 of the Whitefish City Code as described.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Sweeney. Further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, let's teach these bears a lesson and leave them out at 7 p.m. so they can get frustrated trying to open them.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that does carry unanimously. Michelle, which brings us on to Resolution 23-19, amending the 2023 fiscal year annual budget to increase appropriations in 2 city funds. Dana? Oh, excuse me, Laney.
Yeah, she's gonna make me do it now.
Good. Delegating.
Mayor and city councilors, as per state statute, any fund that has exceeded the authorized appropriation as budgeted requires amendment before the public for the purposes of transparency. The Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Fund received additional land water conservation grant funds, and subsequently we made expenditures for the Armory Park Master Plan that exceeded the budget authority by $163,150. Similarly, the Library Fund received additional donations for capital improvements, and making a transfer of these funds to the Library Depreciation Fund resulted in exceeding the Library Fund budget authority by $20,000. The staff recommends approving the budget amendments of Resolution 2319 to increase budget appropriations to accommodate the expenditure of additional revenues received.
Thanks, Laney. Any questions for Laney? We did advertise for a public hearing on this agenda item, Resolution 23-19. Any public comment? Michelle, how about online? I'll go ahead and close the hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 23-19 of our city amending the 2023 fiscal year annual budget to increase appropriation in 2 funds of the city as described.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Norton. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, and those opposed, like sign, and that's unanimous as well. We'll move quickly on to item 6D, which will be our resolution 23-20, accepting and approving the municipal budget for the city of Whitefish for the 2024 fiscal year commencing July 1, 2023 in its final form. We're going to go ahead and hold one public hearing for item 6D as well as resolutions 20 all the way through 23-30. Dana?
Good evening, council. I don't know that I have to say much more than how the Daily Interlake reported our final budget, but we are very excited to be able to share with you and the public that this budget actually has changed significantly since our preliminary budget from a tax increase standpoint. In fact, given the value increase that we received from the Department of Revenue, which was an increase of 60%, roughly, just slightly over that, and some other factors that we'll go over here in a moment, we were able to actually keep our property tax revenue flat. There was, some moving of monies around because we have a 24 mil voted levy. And while I would love to be able to tell the fire department that they get the full 60% increase in those mills, unfortunately, we also have always transferred funds to that department to compensate for that mill rate being so low that we've actually reduced the transfer from the general fund. And that was the way that we were able to keep property taxes flat. The fire department is still getting the same amount of revenue as projected in the preliminary budget. So when you take into account the property taxes and the transfer, it's still the same dollar amount. It's just where the funding's coming from. The money from the general fund is property taxes. It's just a different fund that we collect that in. It's not the voted levy. So with that, we are able to project at this point a decrease for the example property that we've used that goes up to now $700,000, so a 60% increase. They would see an annual decrease of about $56 this coming year, or about a 7.5% decrease from the prior year. By keeping property taxes, the revenue the same, basically that's shared now with more value than it was before, and new property. So the new property is now taking on some of that burden, and that's why you're having some properties see a decrease actually. So it's not the taxable value increase as much as it is we're able to keep our property tax revenue flat due to other factors, and then new taxable property is helping take on that burden, which is resulting in a decrease. Resort tax, we did actually see that come in a little bit lower than we had projected preliminarily. And it's down about 16% compared to the prior year. So roughly 463,000 was what resort tax relief has decreased. But we still see a total property tax relief of $2.4 million, which is very significant, and that's a reduction of about 30 mills, just over 30 mills. In this budget, we did, through the work sessions that we've held with council and with the library, we did add in the part-time library help that they had requested during the work session that we had actually missed in the preliminary preparation. So that has been addressed as well. But there's no changes in wages that was preliminary projected at the 5%. We have that still here. Fund balance, though, you might say, how are we keeping taxes flat and still increasing fund balance? Well, that has to do with what the beginning fund balance came in at. So we had projected beginning fund balance based on what last year's budget was, knowing that that was very conservative and that we often see savings from departments. We saw about $6 million in additional fund balance than what we had originally projected. A lot of that for water and wastewater is due to projects being continued into the next year. And or we did see, even though we didn't do a rate increase, we collected more revenue based on growth, new demand, and it was really dry. So water tends to go up in dry years. We did see additional fund balance in the general fund. Again, that was savings by departments, but one of the biggest triggers actually for us was our investment strategy changed recently in April. We were able to work with our local banks, making sure that we're getting the best rate of return for our checking account now. And so thanks to Glacier Bank, they've matched us with STIP rates, which is the state investment pool. And so our projected income on our investment earnings, we collected almost $350,000 or $375,000 more than we thought we would collect. Obviously, interest rates change. So right now it's great. We know that 2 years ago, we were earning 0.1% on $20 million. Now it's different. And so we're gonna ride that out, and that's really helped us to not do this tax increase, is that we're able to use our money and to earn that interest revenue. Again, I think it's something we have to be aware of that in the future. That's why we didn't do a property tax increase. If rates go down, which I think they'll hold steady, at least through the end of this calendar year. Where it goes from there, we don't know. But we've been conservative in our estimates on revenue gain during fiscal year '24. But that did help us start out with a higher fund balance. Other ones were mainly related to capital being continued to the next year. But with that, the projected year-end fund balance for fiscal year '24 for property tax supported funds would be at 45.6%. That would be what we're going to have as a fund balance. So at the end of the year, which means we're sitting in a very good financial position should an economic downturn happen. We can utilize those funds as needed. I always recommend if you're going to use your fund balance and not have a new revenue source coming up, you would use it for one-time costs, capital purposes, or an economic downturn where you need to replenish funds to avoid layoffs and other reductions in services. So with that, I think the changes spreadsheet that we've provided has been updated. It's on page 336 of your packet, and it details all the changes that we've made since the preliminary budget. And just highlighting a few important ones. On page 336, we did add $100,000 to the water and the wastewater funds to provide for a facility plan update for each of those utilities to support the growth policy process. We also had to adjust based on state legislation the BARSA fund and what the final payout would be, and then that money is now going into our general fuel tax allocation. They've gotten rid of the restrictions, so now we're seeing that actually go into our street fund that could be used for maintenance. So that was added to the street fund. And then for a new bill that the state adopted, Senator Hertz did sponsor this bill, and so we thank him for considering cities that have populations of less than 10,000. As well as all of those who supported this bill. Senate Bill 536 allocated, I think it was $20 million to all cities that were in towns that were under that 10,000 population. Whitefish will receive $813,000 for road maintenance and improvements. So we have budgeted that within the street fund to be about $1 million actually were added to the street fund based on the BARSA funds going to our fuel allocation. And then this $800,000 that was a one-time payment, we've budgeted that $1 million for overlays. So we're gonna have a consultant help out to identify all the roads that need overlays, overlaying roads, streets, and alleyways, alleys. So that was another big change. And again, you'll see where we have added the interest on here is, and now I'm gonna not be able to find it as easily. I didn't highlight it. It is also included on this changes spreadsheet somewhere.
It's just like 5 from the bottom.
5 from the bottom. Thank you.
Investment rate. Page 337.
337.
Well, maybe I have that wrong.
No, I don't know. Anyways, it was on here. I can't find it, and it's on here somewhere, or it was supposed to be, where we've seen a significant increase. Oh, it's right there. $785,000 in investment earnings when we looked at what we would earn over the next year. And that's, again, a conservative estimate for us, knowing that there could be rate changes. So when we look at what we needed and what we're levying, it really comes down to those investment earnings. And so, again, I think I have to say thanks to our banking partners, our local banking partners. Both have been great to work with to make sure that we're earning the best that we can. So with that, since we have reviewed the budget in 2 work sessions and you've also reviewed it during the preliminary hearing, I'm going to leave it at that, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Dana. We'll start with Giuseppe.
Just a quick question, Dana. Remind me, with this new allocation, out of the 3% of the resort tax that we estimate collecting, what percentage are we rebating to the shareholders, to the property owners?
With the excess included?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? I haven't done that calculation.
Okay, then don't worry. I do not need to
It
decide.
is more than the 25% because we are giving additional back from the Haskell Basin and from our regular resort tax. It's just not as significant of a percentage above 25% as it was last year.
Thank you.
Yes.
Further questions for Dana? Rebecca?
Yeah, Dana, what interest rate are we getting? Like, is it 4%, 5%?
You know, it's equivalent to the state investment pool last checked, and I want to say it's 4 something.
Great. Well, that was really a nice surprise.
And it's on a portion of our funds, not our full checking account, but we have essentially a repo account.
So could you just review for the public, like, people are really upset about their property tax increases, but the city is only 24% of their property tax bill.
Yeah, so we're probably even less than that, but the city is reducing our portion of a tax bill unless you're newly taxable property or you've added on to your property during the last year, you should see a tax decrease. And it's going to vary based on what your growth and value was. If your value didn't grow significantly, it's going to be a smaller change than if your value did grow 60%. So, or it might be opposite, might be a bigger change. So it's hard to know like how each property will be handled, but the example is there for what will happen if your home was 60% less and now it's 700,000. You'll see that $55 on your tax bill reduction if you compared last year to this year. But I can't tell you what the county, the schools, and the state. I think the state's mills will probably stay the same. They didn't change those during the legislative session, so that will involve an increase. But the county and schools, you know, they have the ability to change their rates as they need to.
And the schools are about 53% of this property tax bill or so.
School levies account for 50, but local schools is less than that. The school 50% also includes the community college and the state's school levy as
Right.
well.
And I've always thought it was, people are, you know, worried about just disproportionate payment of the resort tax reimbursement for people that have larger homes, second home people, but they also pay a much higher percentage of their school monies too, which is really a nice advantage to our community. And then I guess the last question I had is, we're at 45.6% of surplus. How long will that last? Like how, will that get us through 6 months if we go into an economic downturn?
Yeah, so you could look at it that way and say, well, 50% would be half a year, right? If our budget was the same as what we need this year, you have almost 6 months. State law allows up to 50% for property tax supported funds. So we're not at the maximum, we're getting close to it. But I think that the important, you know, takeaway is that we're prepared at this point. It does give some flexibility. It's the reason why I was able to keep taxes flat this year. And it's something that really was impacted by the CARES funding that the city received during the COVID pandemic when we were allocated funds for the police and fire response to the pandemic, and we had already planned to pay for those funds. We didn't face the challenges some communities did that relied on sales tax where they saw a huge drop. We still collected property taxes about 100%. So that one-time boost truly helped us get to this percentage. It would not have happened otherwise.
Still great news. Thank you.
Further questions for Dana? Not seeing any. We did advertise for a public hearing, and we'll hold a public hearing on resolutions 20 through 30 this evening. Any public comment this evening on our 2024 budget? Michelle, anyone online? Go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council. I think Frank had his hand up. Giuseppe?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move to approve resolutions 23-20 through 23-30 regarding our preliminary, final, and budget and assessments.
Is there a second to the motion? seconded by Giuseppe. Further discussion?
I have one comment, John, and Dana, I know, and I think the public knows, that we are a very fortunate community for many reasons. But I don't think any of us should lose sight of the fact that we're in this position, and under the tutelage of our city manager, both as our finance director for many years and now as our city manager. I don't think there's anybody I don't think there's another city that's been as fortunate as we have, and I think it's a direct result of Dana's fine pencil and the work that she's done. So I thank you, and I think we really are. We're fortunate as a community, and we're fortunate to have you, so thank you.
Further comments? Ben?
I think that's wonderful. This is a great budget update, honestly. I think putting these additional funds towards street overlays will be much appreciated by the citizens. I think the changes that were made in our investment portfolio obviously make noteworthy difference in our budget here, so I appreciate the follow-up there. And I just wanted to thank everybody for the continued fiscal discipline. I think that the citizens care about that, and I think I'm happy to see it here, so great job, everybody.
Thanks, Ben. Rebecca?
Yeah, just, Lainey, thank you too for your hard work. It's really nice to see Dana so relaxed going through a budget hearing after the last few years. And it was really hard for a few years having to do so much through one person, but thank you for keeping our city in good shape. And once again, it would be nice if people came to these, but this is pretty normal to see no one out there, but it's because we have so much trust in you guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further comments? Giuseppe?
Well, I would be amiss if I didn't thank the staff and Dana, since you all have done. I love budgets, and I love even more execution. And to see a plan coming to fruition and a new budget with hopefully even a better plan that will come to fruition is truly exciting. And I would invite Ed Doctor to come and look at these numbers.
Further comments? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. And those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry unanimously. We will move on to item 7A, which is to review and adopt our FY 24 through 28 capital improvement program. Lainey? We did. There's one motion. He bundled them all, 20.
We put it under.
What?
Do you want me to do it?
I can take a sip.
Sure, just take a second. You'll be fine. You'll be fine, sorry.
We Giuseppe, we bundled all those into one. Yeah.
All right. So the capital improvement plan is for fiscal years 24 through 2028, and it encompasses the planned expenditures for capital that have a useful life of 10 years and over the value of $5,000. I think that's right. For all of the various departments, like parks, the Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Fund and the streets are the most significant, of course, but we have a plan for fire, for the general fund, for the bike ped. Let's see, we had water and sewer, the police department, and the fire department. Oh, and the resort tax fund, I'm sorry. So this is a 5-year plan, and we've outlined expected expenditures over the current fiscal year, the fiscal year 24 in particular, the cost of those improvements, and the funding sources that are required for each of those projects. Let's see. We meet with each department to determine what's part of everyone's list, and it's a living document. So while we have plans for the next fiscal year, it gets changed every year, so it gets adapted to what we need going forward. We have a total of $50,218,000 in expenditures planned for fiscal year well, that's for the entire program of the 5 years. And we utilize funds from the resort tax fund, from property tax, from donations and contributions, and grant funds that are raised by the different department directors who do a really good job at that, I've noticed. Hopefully this represents the funding goal, the projects that are considered important by the council through the meetings that you've already held with your retreat, and then as determined by your department directors in terms of the needs for the community.
Thanks, Laney. Any questions for Laney on her staff report or the CIP? Not seeing any? I would entertain a motion. It's not a public hearing. Yep.
Mayor, I so move.
Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Norton. Further discussion? Frank?
Just an observation, Mr. Mayor. I mean, this is nothing more than an observation. I looked down at the total cost here of some 50 million. If you look at it, the two numbers that kind of stand out in terms of over the next 10 years, the money we're going to spend is water and wastewater, represents roughly half of our capital improvement plan. It's an those are, water and wastewater are two of the most important things that we have in this community, and that's where we're spending our money. I think it's kind of interesting.
Thanks, Frank. Further comments? All those in favor, please raise your hand, and those opposed, like sign, and that passes unanimously as well. Michelle, we'll move on to item 8A, which is a continuation on our discussion regarding the Whitefish Yards off-site trail construction and maintenance project. I'll turn it over to Craig first.
Okay, so we've kind of beat this one up over the last few weeks. We had a council work session last month, and then at the council meeting earlier this month on August 7th, we talked about this again. And the issue here revolves around the fact that there's been a fairly significant miscommunication between the city and the developer of the Whitefish Yards project. Trying to determine who it is that will be responsible for building and maintaining the off-site sections of trail for that project. Well, since the last meeting, we've had some correspondence with Ann Moran from DNRC, and it turns out that we also had a miscommunication with DNRC. In order for the easement to be issued from DNRC, originally we were thinking we were applying for a permit. Well, DNRC will actually be issuing an easement for the airspace above the bridge, or between the bridge and the river, for the construction of the bridge. And in order for that to be issued or even considered, we will need more than just a license from BNSF for them to entertain that. And so really I think what we're looking for at this meeting is just some dialogue on that necessity and direction to staff to work with BNSF to potentially secure either an easement or ownership of the portion of property on the BNSF land that we'll need to satisfy DNRC. If we can't get that, then the whole thing is pretty much null and void, and there's no sense in moving forward. So we will still have, some cost implications to discuss at some point, but I'm just not sure it's worth having that conversation at this point until we can at least get over this first hurdle.
Thanks, Craig. Any questions for Craig? Frank?
Craig, what I know about this little problem is it's a twofold problem the way I understand it. We have the demands of DNRC vis-a-vis what easement they will give us is dependent on what easement or license or ownership that we can get for the actual pad for the bridge on the west side of the river, on the east side of the river, excuse me. And so we have two agencies, BNSF and DNRC, demanding inconsistent things or asking for inconsistent things. DNRC wants permanent ownership of the pad. We may or may not be able to get that depending upon what BNSF will give us. And at the same time, DNRC, if we give them enough assurances so that we can do that, we might be able to get something less than ownership of that pad site to get them to approve approve the easement over the river. Is that an accurate,
Yeah, I think that's accurate. At this point, the information that we have from DNRC is that they won't even consider an application for the easement without ownership or a perpetual easement from BNSF.
And so what it seems to me is for us to further, a requirement for us to know where we're going with this thing, or whether this bridge is ever going to be possible, is for us, our staff, to go and investigate with both the NRC and BNSF how we can meet both their requirements to
Correct.
get this thing done. Is that right?
Yes.
I'd be subject to any other direction, but it seems to me that what I would like to see happen is that we in fact direct staff to make this a priority in the short term, given the amount of money that is already invested in this potential bridge, and figure out whether it's ever going to be possible.
Does the council support that direction to staff? Just a showing of hands would be great. Okay. We had a meeting with Casey prior to the regular meeting. Dana, Angie, Maria, Craig, Frank, and I with Casey, and that's exactly what we discussed. So I'm glad you made that motion, Frank. Ben, yep.
Is this able to be determined in a reasonable period of time? And is there any chance BNSF is even going to do this?
I think it depends on BNSF. Things move very slowly with BNSF. I think we discussed in our meeting today that before we even had a signed license agreement, we'd actually built the underpass. So I cannot tell you how long it's going to take. I'm not going to tell you even if BNSF's going to have an appetite to sell us property or to give us a permanent easement. All the agreements we have right now with BNSF for a trail system and for the underpass are license agreements. I have not seen a permanent easement from BNSF. So I can't tell you what the chances are that they will be even considering selling us land or a permanent easement. I cannot tell you how much it's going to cost. If that is a possibility, and in time-wise, I'm going to tell you it's probably going to move pretty slow. Everything we have with BNSF has moved pretty slow.
I mean, doesn't this sound like something that could take years to even answer this question or something?
I would hope it wouldn't take years, but I mean, we can make it a priority, but we can only do so much on our side. You know, we can't force BNSF to respond to us to move in a fashion that we would consider expedient.
Is there any kind of timeline that we're trying to operate under for any of this?
Given the circumstances, I think all parties understand that as long as it's a priority, we'd like to move forward. At some point, I think it'll become clear that we can't meet Casey's requirements or needs, and he'll have to do something else, but we'd like to give it a shot under the circumstances. All we're talking about now, Ben, is really seeing if we can focus BNS attention to the matter and discuss with us, and maybe bring DNRC to the table and say, look, this kind of a project involves a railroad. Railroads don't give property away. They don't give permanent easements away, yet we have another opportunity. Will you accept it under these circumstances? So I think there may be some give to be had on one side or the other, Ben, and we just have to really kind of press this and investigate it. And since we have to be the ones that would hold whatever license or ownership or it is on that property, we've got to pursue it. Casey can't do it.
But Casey does own property on the river farther down. So if it doesn't work out, maybe there's a way to get easements along the other side of the river and then have the bridge go to his property. No, I mean, do you see?
His 310 permit for the Miles Avenue section was denied by the Conservation District
Oh, for the new condos that he's building?
for his trail system.
Oh, it was?
It was.
Okay, well, there you go. Okay, well, good luck, you guys. I mean, you're gonna need it.
Thanks to staff for following through on this. Dana, you have Dana's report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Dana from the council? Dana, anything additional to report on?
I just have a couple things. Just a reminder, it's in my staff report, but next meeting will be on a Tuesday for everybody else. I want to thank the fire department for their quick response to the fire that was just west of town it came up last night. Actually, Cole's crew was on it quickly. It was about 1/10 of an acre. They were able to get control of it. That was really close to town. So thank you for your response. I know DNRC helped out, and we appreciate the state's fast response as well. And talking about fires and the season we've had here. The county has, actually, I just want to bring attention to you guys as well as the public. The county has on their website, if you search Flathead County and go to their departments and go to the Office of Emergency, Emergency Services, you can sign up for their OnSolve Code Red program where you can get alerts, not just fire alerts, but weather alerts, severe weather alerts, and those type of things. Sign up for emails or text messages or phone calls. They also have an app you can download as well. So that's something really important, I think, for everybody to understand and get signed up for if they can. We will be utilizing, the county's notification system if we were to ever need that type of situation. Hopefully it doesn't. We don't. So with that, I just want to thank all the directors for their hard work on the budget. It seems like I'm the one doing it, but a lot of them are pulling the weight, really doing the detailed work and the spending, being very cautious about spending. They've all done a great job to manage their budgets and save the city money as well. So thanks to all the directors for that. And I just want to wish Michelle a very happy birthday this coming Thursday. She will be on vacation, and I will be doing your packet next meeting. So sorry if I messed it up. That's all I'm going to say in advance.
Happy birthday, Michelle.
Thanks.
We'll start with counselor comments, or we'll finish up with counselor comments. Rebecca, do you want to start tonight?
I had two citizens ask questions. One was about fire, actually, and they were wondering if we could do any training on evacuation routes. And I know it differs from a chemical fire. I think it was Bridger was saying that we would stay in our homes if it was something with the railroad, but if it was a fire, we would be evacuating. And so I think people have a lot of anxiety because of this fire season and what's happening in other parts of the country and Hawaii. And I'm wondering if there's a way that our new fire chief, not to put too much on your shoulders, but if we could do neighborhood planning with different neighborhoods, because of course it's different across the viaduct than here on this side of town, I think it would help people to know that we actually have plans in place, and then actually talk to them about how they prepare their homes and their families for evacuation, and just something that we could do outreach on so that it would alleviate a lot of anxiety in case we are going to have it.
So Cole and I just had this conversation this
Okay.
morning, or this afternoon.
Great
So I
minds
think
think
he
alike.
knows that that's a topic that we're going to need to address. We're going to let him ease into the position a little bit and let the fire season maybe fizzle out a bit since they've been responding to any close fires. So I think that'll definitely be something we'll look at doing later in the fall or winter time. They also slow down on the number of calls, so it'll be helpful for their staff too and how they can prepare for that. But it is on our top priority list to be able to, provide the education. We're not going to necessarily be able to provide the routes, but we'll be able to educate how to prepare and what really happens. And I think this fire season, what it's shown is the sheriff's department and who takes command and how they've been able to do it without a specific route, maybe identified in some of those areas that are harder to get out of. So I think it'll be a good process to go through, and we'll definitely be looking at doing some community outreach on education for those things.
Thank you both for thinking about that. And then the second thing that people brought up is, how do we regulate formula retail downtown? Because people are concerned that we weren't supposed to have formula retail, and now they're seeing that happening. And the other complaint was people soliciting customers from the sidewalk and grabbing people and bringing them into their retail establishment. Do we have any guidelines around that?
So Rebecca, we do regulate formula retail. It is not permitted downtown. It depends on whether that type of business meets our definition of formula retail, which is 14 or more of the same businesses with the same uniform, same logo, same merchandise. So there's been some big businesses that haven't fallen under that, even though they might look like they would, like the black tie ski rentals didn't actually meet our criteria, so they were allowed to operate. I'm not sure which business that you're specifically referring to, but I'm not aware of any formula retail that meets our code criteria of what a formula retail is that's operating.
Okay, I'd rather not say out loud, but I can talk to you. It's just that people have seen similar establishments in other places, and so they assume that it's a chain. But it's 14. You have to get up to 14 before it's considered.
Yeah, and it has to have all the same merchandise. It's meet a bunch of criteria. Same uniforms, same color scheme. I mean, there's a list of things that it has to meet that. So like a
Yeah.
McDonald's has the same
Yeah.
menu everywhere, the same logo, the same uniforms. That's what meets our formula retail. So yeah.
So if someone has,
So they could change their name, change the sign, change the
Yeah.
logo, and it wouldn't be considered a formula retail.
right, and even if they sold similar products here or in
Similar, but not the
Kalispell, it might
exact-
not be the
yeah.
same. So, okay, people just probably didn't understand the standards that we've set. All right, thank you.
And then as far as people grabbing people off the street, I don't know how we would regulate that.
Thanks, Rebecca. Ben?
No comments this evening.
Thank you, Ben. Frank?
Nothing further this evening.
Thank you, Frank. Giuseppe?
Yes, I grab people off the street. So kidding. Just a point of precising the fact that, am I clear that if I start a business in Whitefish and I'm number one, and I apply and I get permitted in this area, I'm not a formula retail. But then, in the next 20 years, I expand in Missoula, Bozeman, Salt Lake City, and all of a sudden I'm 50 completely identical stores. I still keep the right to be here because I was not a formula when I applied. Am I correct?
That's absolutely correct.
So,
And Mackenzie River is a great example of that.
Thank you. So I think this is important to clarify because people can get confused with that. As a comment, I only had a reminder if we need to discuss about the impact fees and the directions to the staff, unless we agree that we have already given them directions.
I think we gave direction in the work session, but if you have anything to add, certainly.
No, that's fine.
Did you get the direction you needed, Dana?
You know, I think at this point, what
Just
I would
bring it
bring
forward,
forward
right?
is bring forward the report and the maximum fees. I think the only one, is the city hall one, if you guys do want to remove that one, or if you want to still see it on the resolution and decide after a public hearing, I think that's the only one that I question is the idea of going to a third floor in 10 years. Again, happy to put it on there if you guys want to. I know staff would, as we grow, we'll need the space. There's no question.
I would include it for the public hearing.
Okay,
I think that would be important, and we can always eliminate it if, based on public comment.
okay, that sounds good. Will do.
Anything further, Giuseppe?
I did talk to Craig about adding stormwater. We talked about adding the transportation later and amending this. Craig, did you want to talk to that at all? Or, I'm not sure if I got it
About
correct.
adding stormwater back into an impact fee?
Yeah, because we're removing it, but then we were talking about stormwater maintenance if we go above 13,000 in 10 years and.
Yeah, so the conversation that we had, I believe what you're referring to is the MS4 requirements, the municipal separated stormwater requirements, which the trigger for that is a population of 10,000 or more. And so once we hit a census population of 10,000 or more in Whitefish, we'll move into that MS4 community status where we'll actually have specific permits for each of our stormwater outfalls, where we'll have to do very specific monitoring and sampling and likely treatment. And so when we fall under that category, rather than an actual impact fee, we'll likely have to create a separate stormwater utility, similar to our water and wastewater utility, where residents and business owners will essentially be assessed fees based on the amount of impervious surface of each property. So they're kind of two different ways of managing necessary expenses for that, but we're still several years away from that.
Thanks, Rebecca. Dana, anything further from staff? Council? Cole, congrats again. We are adjourned.